How much did Celsius pay for GK8 less than a year ago, or slightly more than a year ago?
They paid October 2021. They paid 150 million, which consisted of 100 million cash and 15 million in cell tokens. So the founders, they've extorted quite a lot out.
All right, so let's just assume that the cell tokens, just for the sake of discussion, that the cell tokens weren't really worth anything.
Well,
And
no,
let's
they
just
could
call it
have they could
100
have
million.
dumped those at their peak for an incredible price.
Well, I know that. I'm just saying, but when you look at the cold hard cash that was exchanged, it was $100 million, and they're selling it now for 44 million or whatever it is less an adjustment, and God only knows what that adjustment is going to be. The point that I'm getting at is you have a transaction that was done less than a year ago, and you can assert, I mean, it's not an easy claim to assert, but you can say that when Celsius purchased GK8, the money that it paid for it was essentially a fraudulent conveyance because it overpaid for the price of the assets that it purchased. Now, those types of claims are not the norm on fraudulent conveyances, but I brought them on behalf of liquidating trusts, where you say, basically, I got ripped off when I purchased this asset shortly before the bankruptcy. And I think that's really what was on Judge Glenn's mind when we started the hearing, because he asked, when was this purchased? How much was it for? And then he starts looking to see that there are some people here who are conceivably insiders they're not getting a release, as I understand it, from avoidance claims, but the avoidance claims are being assigned over to the purchaser. So in effect, they're getting a release. So, I mean, it caught the judge's eye, and I thought his questions were dead on accurate about, that he wasn't, I mean, really, really spot on, that he wasn't going to approve the transaction unless he heard from the parties whether whether they did an evaluation of what potential avoidance claims existed, and B, how much they were. And so he put both the debtor and the committee on the spot about it. And when the buyer basically said, Judge, there's deadlines coming up and there could be adverse consequences, that's when we got to see a testy Judge Glenn, who said, you're not going to cram down your deadlines on me. I'm not going to approve this until I have that information. It was absolutely 100% the right call. And I'll be very curious to know, I don't know enough about GK8, but I'll be very curious to know, like, when they do this analysis, whether any of these people, who are associated at GK8, whether there are any potential claims that the estate, the Celsius estate, excluding GK8, has against these parties, other than the fraudulent conveyance claim that I mentioned, to start off with, that they overpaid for the assets. I think when he started asking the questions about how much you paid for this asset, when was it, he was trying to establish that it was in the 2-year window for a fraudulent conveyance. And so it's obviously a year and 2 years from the date of petition. So he found out that it was 9 months before the petition date, and the amount of consideration that was paid was 3-4 times the amount that they're selling it for. With respect to the subtractions that he referenced, I think, and I might have missed it, but I think what he was referring to is, when you look at the asset purchase agreement, it's $44 million, but there are all sorts of adjustments, post-closing adjustments, that need to take place. So we really don't know what the actual sales price is until these post-closing adjustments come into place. And what he wants to basically measure that against, what's being given up. Okay, so you can acknowledge that the only party who was out there who was interested in buying these assets was Galaxy. And they're agreeing to pay $44 million less the adjustment. But what is actually being given up? Are the debtors giving up potentially a fraudulent conveyance claim for $50 million that they overpaid for the assets for a year ago? What claims are being given up against insiders for preferences or fraudulent conveyances? It shows that the judge is paying very careful attention to these types of transactions.